Nothing that we say is investment advice. Please pause on all 3 pages of this disclaimer and read it.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Good morning, Algo artisans. We're starting just a little bit early today. And the reason is we got PPI dropping at about, 7 minutes, 6 minutes. So I just wanted to take a look at the charts, and USDJPY has been yielding us a lot of really good trades. So we're going to focus there, but I want to start also by looking at Bitcoin showing a lot of resilience here. Bitcoin showing resilience at, I should say above really 102,000. Anytime it tries to dip below 102, it seems to keep popping up. And while we're waiting for the data to drop, we'll go ahead and continue to look at this. And I do think, I think Bitcoin has the capability to kind of stay where it is in this 102 range. I'm looking at all these different screens that you see. I'm looking at different time frames, and there's a lot of bullishness on the monthly. But what may happen here on the daily? So we're going to look at where each one of these candles is 1 days with the price action. It could simply pop up and break the all-time high, but I do see the possibility of maybe some sideways action for a while before it does that, maybe even a move back down into the 90s. This could happen with Bitcoin. I know a lot of people are watching Bitcoin. I don't really trade Bitcoin. I can trade Bitcoin, but just the fees are so big, and I trade on the low time frame. If I were swing trading more, Bitcoin might make a lot more sense to trade. I'm pretty good at trading it, but I think you're going to see Bitcoin remain in a range, perhaps this range up here, which is basically between 101.5 and 105, maybe a little bit higher, but I like 105 for this range, maybe 102 to 105, we'll say, or it may drop down to this 96 to 93 range. You might see that happen as well, and of course do anything in between, and that's going on for the next week or two or longer. And I do think, at least based on what I'm seeing in the algos, there's a really good chance we're going to break that all-time high, and it could happen within a month or two, if not sooner, but that's what we're looking at for now. Let's roll over to the NASDAQ while we're waiting for the PPI data to drop. In fact, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to our quant and ask the quant, and we're going to ask the quant what we think will happen. Will PPI data drop, say, today? Now, I usually only share this with Algo Factory members in the private chat, okay? But we already had CPI come out, so we'll go ahead and give everybody a treat here. Let me see here. Expecting PPI at 0.2% month over month, core at 0.3, month over month with 68% confidence. Okay, so key risk metric, trucking rate showing negative 2.3% decline, could surprise lower, recommend blah blah blah. So we're not going to worry about the quant's recommendations. We are going to take a look at what the estimate is on PPI, today being the 15th. So we got about 2.5-ish minutes left. Core at 0.3% is the estimate. PPI month over month, 0.2%. So here we're saying expecting PPI at 0.2, core at 0.3. So it's actually, the quant is guessing, or I should say calculating, that it'll be no big surprise. So what would probably happen when you don't have a big surprise in the quant data, and provided that unemployment, retail sales data don't surprise either, let's actually ask the quant what it thinks. Do you think core U.S. U.S. retail sales, core retail sales, and unemployed data will say this morning? All right, let's see what the quant says about the rest of the data. So far, PPI, which is, in my opinion, the strongest metric, it's an inflation metric for producers, and that metric appears not to be a surprise. So money, in this case, would just probably flow back into the market as expected, meaning that, the charts would probably resume their path, right? Now, the quant's not giving me any data right now on this. It may be that the quant doesn't have the capability to calculate for that, and that's just fine. I'm not so worried about these data, but if these data are way off of the expectation, then you might get a surprise in how the market moves. So let's go ahead and look at the NASDAQ, see what it looks like it wants to do. Very similar to Bitcoin, but not quite as bullish on the high time frame. But the NASDAQ does seem to continue to want to power up for now. It's starting to reach a resistance. So with NASDAQ, I might expect some sideways action or even a retracement down to the 20,900 level, which is not a big move per se, but that's a pretty substantial time for price to not go up. Now, it could go up a little bit, but this big move that we just saw over the last week is probably going to calm down. You might get a little sideways action and at least a move back down to like 21,000. Okay, this data is going to drop. Let's take a look at USDJPY up close and let's see how it's going to behave. It's been on a nice uptrend for a few days. So we're going to look at the 1 minute chart. Okay, and all this data is going to drop all at the same time. There it goes. Okay, so USDJPY spiked down. And it continues to spike down. That means the dollar is getting weak or the JPY is getting strong. Wow, look at that. Look at it go. Now, that's on the 1 minute chart, so I know this looks substantial. But if I were to zoom out, it's just a blip. But it is showing that actually it might be time for the JPY to turn around. It's been on a 3-week uptrend. So if you look here on the daily chart, it's been going up for 3 weeks. But it is also at kind of a delicate point where it could want to turn around and that uptrend does not continue. And it looks as if right now, that's what we're about to see. Price go ahead and head down. Now, am I going to trade that just yet? No, we got a little bit of a support right here. And it looks like the data is calming, or the reaction to the data is calming down. So let's go ahead and see what the data actually was. Okay, so core PPI was a little weaker than expected, right? So that means that some might think that we're going to see a cut. Now, the PPI itself was very weak. Wow, big time. Big surprise there. People were expecting a bit of inflation, and this, I think, technically is deflation compared to what was expected, right? Retail sales was lower than expected. Month-over-month retail sales was a little better. Unemployment was no surprise at all. Manufacturing index was a bit lower than expected. Philly Fed manufacturing index was actually better than expected. So we got Fed Chair Powell speaking in 10 minutes. We have weak inflation data, meaning when I say weak inflation, I mean disinflation or deflation, meaning inflation is dropping a bit. Interesting, we should have a meeting 10 minutes after this data for Fed Chair Powell to speak. It's just some research conference, but everything Powell says is going to be microscoped because CPI came out this week a little cool. PPI came out pretty darn cool according to these numbers right here. So what that means is that there is a really good chance that how do I say this? There's a really good chance the cuts will come sooner than later. Now, I don't know that we're going to get interest rate cuts like next month or whenever the next FOMC is, but the market seems to think that the dollar is going to get weaker, and you can see it right here in the charts. The dollar here is selling off. See that? And this is on the 30-minute chart. So if I were to go down to, say, the 5-minute chart, you'll see and this is forex is the best place to look to see the reaction to the data. We'll look at Bitcoin and NASDAQ again too, but you can see already selling off. Now, I wouldn't sell into this candle. I don't like to sell into these big long candles. This is a reaction candle, and while it may continue down, at some point there's going to be a pull up. And even if I was, which I do scalp and I day trade, even if I were to do that, I would let this news get digested, look for a pullback, and I'd short that if the algo's said to go short, right? So that's how I would handle this, but definitely dollar week data. So that's good news for like stocks and so on. Bitcoin, those should have gone up a little bit. So let's take a look at Bitcoin. There it is, popping up. And this is on the 5-minute chart. So it's bouncing off of this low end of the range that I drew a little bit earlier, right? So if we go to the 3-hour chart, the swing trading chart, it bounced off of where it's been bouncing, right? It's just continuing that move up from last night, really this morning, I should say. And if we go to the 30-minute chart, we can see it in a more granular fashion with Bitcoin here, where I would be willing to bet on a... If I could get, and again, I'm not really trading this, but if I were to trade it, I would bet on price at least re-entering this range. It's not a very clean range, but there's a fair amount of activity, order block activity, if you will, going back to here. And this is a decent range to paint right here. Bitcoin's probably going to re-enter that. It's doing it now. It's actually reacting pretty strongly. But I wouldn't long this right now, for basically 2 hours of like going up. I mean, yeah, you could long it, but I would at least look for a pullback if I were going to go long. And then I'd long in this range. I'd look for a trade along those lines right there. That's how I would trade Bitcoin. But again, it's hard for me to find a good exchange where I can trade Bitcoin without getting just jacked on fees for low time frame trades. It is what it is. Solana doing a similar move, but taking a backseat to Bitcoin. I think Solana is developing a range that's a pretty clear range. Okay, so right here, well, definitely the bottom of the range is clear. I'd say the top of the range is safely here. Just this greater range that I painted before. So, maybe perhaps a move up here as long as everything continues to go up with Bitcoin. That's a swing trade. You'd be in that for a day or two. And it, again, Solana is a little better if I were to trade crypto. The fees are not quite as bad on that. Let's move over to the NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ is not showing a very strong reaction. Very interesting. Let's go ahead and look at the lower time frame. Yeah, very lukewarm reaction. Well, actually, so the thing about the NASDAQ is that it is at a point where it's going to want to kind of reset just a little bit. So if I take a look at the 3-hour, the NASDAQ's been having some real strong moves up. So it may be that the current, I could tell you for sure that prior to the news, it wanted to head down, but that news might have kind of stopped it from doing that. I don't know if it's going to range now, but I think eventually it will make its way back down to about 21,000. And then it may crawl here for a bit while it decides what it wants to do. Remember the market, NASDAQ stock market, everything has been pretty bullish. We had the big gap up on China news. And you're talking about a situation where many very wealthy people are going to want to take profit, and that's probably what's going to happen here and why we didn't get a big move up. So I think there might be some profit taking and letting the charts reset, but it may not take that long. Let me take a look here. It might, it could continue to head up, but I do think that we're going to see it calm down and maybe even break out of this range up here, or at least bounce in the range. But I think a move down even to like 20,000 is not unrealistic for the next week or two. We're just going to have to see if the NASDAQ can sustain this big run that it's seen, right? So let me see if there are any. I don't see any chart requests in the chat here. So if anybody wants to see a chart, we do have a few minutes left. I know I started a little bit early, but I wanted to watch the PPI do its thing, right? So let's take a look at the USDJPY and see if we have a way to trade this. Starting to see the move back up on the very low time frame here. So we had the initial reaction and we have a move back up. Let me take a look at the algos and see if a continuation down is, it would be pretty risky to short this right now. But I do think that it will. Let me take a look at this. I think the trade is going to look something like. I think a lot of people are going to wait for a bearish retest, but there's not a lot of very clean structure going back to like the last several hours. This is a 1 minute chart, right? So we're talking about scalpers, right? But this is some messy kind of just a move up right here, which could have clued us into which way this was going to go. I don't think it's quite time to short this, but the only clear short-term structure is going to be right here or right here. I mean, if the USDJPY on this low time frame can climb, and it might take a while, but if it could climb up to here, I might look to short that. It might be the day trade of the day for the moment, but my rules will not allow me to enter the trade as is. Let's see, can I do this? Yeah, I mean, technically I can. I could do a pretty small entry at the current level, but I have I've really done well to be patient and wait for the proper trades. That's really helped me out. So now we do have a fair amount of people watching this broadcast. So if anybody has any chart requests, feel free to throw it up in the comments, right? If you throw up a request in the comments, I will be able to at least take a look at that chart before we go on to the Algo Factory Live Lab, the private live lab. And I'm going to get that set up while I'm waiting for requests. Also, while we're all watching, waiting for requests to pile in, I've got right here for you. You can see it. Get your free algo in the description. I trade algorithmically. I use the data on the screen to tell me which way price will go. I don't really care about the news. I avoid trading the news. I wait for the news to come out, and then I will take advantage of the resulting volatility, right? So USD CAD request from JUP09. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, USD CAD have been kind of had it as a secondary or tertiary pair to trade. Interesting look. USD CAD's got a lot of bullishness on it, but it's also at a point where you're going to see the pullbacks. So I think what's going to happen is I think we're looking at a. Let me go to the 30-minute chart on this. I think what you're going to see is a bit of a range until it falls, but it's not going to fall far, right? So you're going to see price kind of in this range area. And then I think, and it's you got to kind of watch it because the way that the algos are, it could really go either way. But yeah, tricky. I think if anything, it's just going to range for a little while. And the ranges that might be where it kept, like you'll be able to scalp a little bit, right? But all these ranges that I'm painting right now are where price could get caught. And I think it's going to stay in this area for days to weeks. Probably, I'd say by mid-week next week, we might see price having made a decision. But because it's such a mixed market, when you look at the time frames, like there's a lot of bullishness going to the weekly, even the daily, even the 3 hour. But at the 3 hour chart, you're starting to see price want to turn around. But the problem is you have a lot of bullishness on the daily and the weekly. So until that wears out, you're just going to see price kind of bounce around in ranges. To trade it right now, I would look for a short, but the way I would do that, I mean, you could short now if you're like scalping maybe, but I would do this. I would let price, because the short's already started. So I'd let that play out. It's probably going to bounce up, and then I'd short again at some local structure. And again, the algos would have to allow me to take that short, right? So I might want to look for a move. Now, it might not go all the way down to 139.66. It might only have a shallow kind of a bounce at, something like 139.82, but then I would look to maybe short just the top of this range right now. Because when something's range bound, then you trade the range. It's not a very clean range. You've got, it's actually pretty dirty. But I think your basic range is intact. So when you have a basic range intact, you can kind of count on price bouncing at those resistances and supports. And then if you have an algorithm, which there's a free one right there, so just go to the link, right? Go to the link, click on the link in the description, and go follow that, and we'll give you an algo. You'll have to optimize it yourself, but at least they teach you how to build it, and that way you can actually have algorithmic confluences to making your trade, right? So so there you go. That's what I would do. I'd short the top of that range. I hope that answers your question, JUP09. Let me go ahead as I'm getting set up for the private live lab, which means we'll end this show here. If there are more requests coming through, I can handle them. I don't see any of our Algo Factory guys making requests right now, because I usually know who those are. Although JUP09, I've seen you before. You might be an Algo Factory member for all I know. But I am going to go ahead and just get set up for that while people might have more requests. So feel free to ask for them. Put the request in the chat as I prep for the next move. Now, if there is trading to be had after I do the private live lab session, then what I'm going to do is come back and we'll do a day trading session, and we'll just continue to, we'll continue to be on YouTube, and I'll let you guys watch me scalp. So, I don't relay the stop losses, the specific stops, or the specific take profits. That's for the traders to determine. I will share the stop loss and take profit data in Algo Factory, right? So the live lab, the private live lab, they all get to see, what my trades are. Now, they're not supposed to follow my trades. They're supposed to do their own research. 5 by 5. Okay, so, but yeah, there's actually the live lab's pretty quiet right now. I don't know where everybody is. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So I got the live lab running. It hasn't filled in yet though, so as we got more people coming in, we'll we'll go ahead and flip over to that. But just kind of waiting for more people to fill in then. All right. Okay, now they're filling in. Good. All right, so stay tuned here. I'm going to come back. We're going to do a day trading session if there is a day trading to be had. And, we'll do that as long as there are opportunities in the market. So for the next few hours, this is a new thing we're doing here. Again, I will let people know when I'm going to take a trade. You'll have an idea of what that trade looks like. You're going to have to determine your own stops and take profits unless you're in Algo Factory, which you're still going to have to determine your own, but I will share mine. And that's just for you to do your own research. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, get the algo links in the description, do all that stuff. We're killing it at Algo Factory. Just so you understand, the sessions that I've been doing, the scalping sessions, I'm winning trade after trade. The losses are small, the wins are big. We had a killer win yesterday. So yeah, we are teaching people how to do what I do, teach people how to build their own algo, and we're teaching people how to trade like a hedge fund pro. So we'll be back in about 45 minutes to an hour, and we're going to do some day trading. So please tune back in, and we hope to see you then. All right. Thanks for watching.
Join us or die.
Just kidding. You're not going to die. Don't worry about it. But join us anyway. I'll see you there.